Hello, Yaakov.
Hi, how are you? Good evening.
Yaakov, are we on 49 filtering drinks? Or did we
Uh,
start that? Did we go to 53?
I think
52.
52. Yes, the Saul was right. Okay.
Mishnah Berurah.
The Mishnah were by the drinks. Okay.
very good.
Okay, very good.
Hi, Jacob.
Wait
Hi, Mario, how are you?
for a few minutes here, Chaim. Okay. We are on 52, the Mishnah Brura. The Mishnah Brura, here's Abe. Okay. Maybe George is coming. We'll see. We're on page 52, Mishnah Brura. Mishnah Brura writes that it's good to refrain from filtering. We're still in the halachas of borer, even partially murky liquids. Regarding completely clear liquids, he rules leniently, permits the use of a strainer in accordance with the Rashba and the Ran, though he notes that the Bach is more stringent when only a minority of people filter the liquid. Says the Mishnah, given the Balava Sinun Gam Kenhem Tzlulim, if water is clear to start with, even without a sieve, it's going to be clear. V'ru'im lishtos, and they're ready to be drunk even without filtering. Lachain, ein b'zeh mishum bor. There's no borer. Utzlulim mikri kol sheroy lishtos kach b'li sunan. Tzulim, the definition of tzulim means if it's ready to be drunk without sieving. George 152, Mishnah Bura. L'Rav Ne'adav, v'yesh machmirin, including the Bach, the dafka kishukulam yicholim lishtos. The getter is that everybody has to drink. Kach. Ve'emasani al kadesh yutzulum b'yoyser. Ula Rambam v'taimo nira mishum shelo yasa gedech shu oyser b'chol. You don't want to do something that you normally do during the week. L'dina alocha kedas rishona, that you can filter if it's clear. But lo b'churim, not if it's murky. Hainu af b'churim tzas. The ilu b'churim lagamri alo af l'dei rishona aser. If it's very murky, then according to all opinions would be prohibited. It's important to point out that the leniency regarding filtering liquids that can be drunk as they are only applies because the waste forms part of the liquid. But if, for example, there's some dirt mixed with a salad, it does not form part of the salad. Therefore, removing it is prohibited. One practical application of leniency may be the use of a filter attached to a faucet or water filter jugs that some commonly use at home. The Shmir Shabbos Kilchazal writes that these filters may be used on Shabbos, provided that people generally drink the water without filtering. Says the Shmir Shabbos, page 54, Mutar li shtamish beberes mayim. You can use the faucet. She'al piv mutekes misanenes, and even though a filter has been attached, Chemutar lavir mayim nekim derech masane. You can filter clear water through some kind of filter. Why are you filtering it? You want to make sure that there's no dirt there. However, in a place where people are careful not to drink water unless they filter it, like a place where there's worms, so then you can't use filters. Elohim King shows the mime shares my bears a low cost. Bor does not apply when one prevents waste entering one's mouth at the actual time of drinking. It means if you drank it directly from the faucet without a cup, that would be permitted. Some of the more modern filtering systems use charcoal to remove impurities from the water. At the stage that the charcoal is mixed with the water, it becomes undrinkable. And this stage can last for long periods of time. Were the water to become undrinkable for only a moment as it passed through the filter, it would be permitted. So therefore, some poskim, such as Rav Yitzchak Rubin, prohibit the use of such systems. Others, such as Yaakov Yariel, he was the chief rabbi of Ramat Gan, permit them. And this is the position taken by the Tzurba Institute. Tzurba Institute is a halachic institute in Israel that works with a lot of technology. We will conclude this section of Borer with one final question related to filters. We saw above that according to the Shmir Shabbos Hilchos, one may not filter water that is not drinkable halachically due to the presence of visible, forbidden insects in the water. Kateri Poskim has debated extensively the status of New York City tap water, which sometimes contains little creatures called copepods, with some forbidding drinking filtered water and others permitting it. According to those authorities that require filtering the tap, may one drink water that was filtered on Shabbos. Rav Belsky, who himself ruled that one may drink the water, rules in two different places in his Sefer Shulchan HaLevi that those who hold the water is forbidden may not filter the water on Shabbos. Right? They asked him, "Ayim mutar lahotzi mayim miber sheish la misanenes hamiyades l'sanin kol minei psolas or tolagim." Can you drink water from a faucet that has a filter that's meant to filter worms, sheish b'mayim or sheish b'chaz isur borer? He answers, "Im hiski misanein zu mishum shu choishish meikra din li'isur muravim b'mayim." If the reason he put the filter in the first place was because he was concerned about drinking water that has worms in it, then it's a real borer problem. You would not be able to drink water that had been filtered. But if you're using the filter, most people are going to drink this water. They're not concerned about the worms. And they just want to refine the water more. Or his opinion that these small things are not usher, and because he wants to have additional care, but in another place, New York, there's no concern about drinking water in New York. Regarding the worms issue, you don't have to do it. But someone who has a problem because he doesn't want to drink these worms, then he cannot because you're violating borer. You have to filter the water before Shabbos. But for example, washing or rinsing vegetables, Rav Herschel Schechter, who ruled that one must filter the water because he was concerned about these worms, rules that one may filter the water even on Shabbos, do a combination of reasons. And this is summarized in OU Kosher. I live in New York City and will not drink the city water without filtering it due to the presence of tiny sea creatures in the water. One may not pour water through a filter because it may constitute borer. My faucet has an under-the-sink inline filter that removes the copepods. Am I permitted to run the tap water on Shabbos and use the water? Is this the same as pouring water through a filter, which is prohibited? Answer: using the faucet on Shabbos to wash hands or dishes is certainly not an issue, because it is unnecessary to filter copepods for these issues, for these uses. Even washing fruits and vegetables is not a concern, because copepods do not stick to food. What about drinking water from the faucet? Rav Schechter ruled that this is permissible for a combination of reasons. The Nishmas Adam was uncertain if there's any issue with filtering out tiny bugs that you would not find objectable if not for halachic concerns. That's number one. The prevalence of copepods in the water is only a suffix. Most cups of water will be clean and not need filtering. 3, there are poskim who allow drinking water with copepods. The Minchas Yitzchak writes that there's more room for leniency with regard to built-in under-the-sink filters. This is because the filter does not remove the bugs from the water. Rather, clean water passes through the filter, and the copepod bugs remain behind in the water in the pipe. Since the bugs are not separated from the water, you don't have filtering. He offers other arguments as to why it should be permitted. Okay, so we don't live in New York, so it's less of an issue for us.
In Los Angeles, probably more bugs in the water, which we don't know about. So I don't know that living in New York makes a difference. A lot of people drink the water in New York. A lot of people drink the tap water in New York.
Saul said that he remembers even 40 years ago, the water had a cloudiness to it in New York. They had to let it settle before they drank it.
Well, that's because they put a lot of probably they put, I don't know what,
Chlorine.
chlorine. Yeah, they used to put chlorine in the water. It's correct.
Well, they put fluoride in the water to help our teeth.
Also have fluoride. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, what about washing fruit? Borer apprises when one wishes to rinse or soak fruits or vegetables on Shabbos to remove any dirt or other waste particles that may be present. The Mishnah Masechta Shabbos prohibits soaking vetches in water in order to remove chaff attached to them. Ein sholin esar karshinin. You can't soak these are legumes. Below shafinosam, you can't rub them. Rashi explains why not. Vein shows a karshim meitzif aleim mayim bekli livor psulosim. Pouring water over these legumes to get rid of the waste, you can't do that. Kiditnan b'masechles beitza af meidich v'shola. That's on yontif, that you can do it on yontif. V'lo shafinosam biyad, you can't scrape it with your hand. Lasir psolos, the havalei bor. And the Shulchan Aruch paskins that way. In shortness of karshin, you can't soak these vetches. In order to remove waste, you can't rub them with your hand. And the Mishnah Berurah applies the same prohibition to soaking any food or other mixture in order to remove the waste. Ein Sharon, he says you can't soak. If there's food and waste mixed up, usher, lit name b'mayim, you can't put them in water. So that the waste drops could go on ofar, like dirt or shiatzif l'malakont. You got to do it before Shabbos. What's karshihu Michael behema? Vetches are food that's given to animals. Let's say potatoes. Potatoes have dirt on them sometimes. You can't rinse them on Shabbos. The Prima Godim clarifies that this prohibition applies even if one wishes to consume the food immediately, as soaking the food in water is considered comparable to removing the waste from the food. Right? We learned you gotta eat the food, not the waste. Yes.
This is only soaking them. This is not rinsing them. This is putting them in a kli. Yeah.
Well, in the second part of the Mishnah Berurah, it says, "Lo yiten aleim mayim kedei lahasir ha'avak va'afar maleim." That seems to be implying rinsing as well. The first part was ein shoyrin, that's soaking. But we had also in the hadacha, af meidich v'shola. Hadacha is rinsing. So that seems to imply that you can't rinse it either. Says the Prima Godim, v'im shola b'mayim, if you soak it, in order for shiatzifa Michael v'ha'afar lamata, you want the food to rise to the top and the dirt to fall. Im yatzifa psolos lamala, if the dirt rises, v'rotza lechol miyad ha'ochel im shari, and you want to eat the food right away, can you do it? Yeshlomar dekivan denivra b'pamachas apsolos v'ochel b'shaveh. Since at one moment the food and the waste got separated, it's kabor psolos b'toich ochel dami v'asar. He prohibits. So based on these sources, one might conclude that the common practice of rinsing fruits and vegetables in the sink should be prohibited. However, Rav Wosner writes that washing fruit with the sole intent of removing unrecognizable pesticide remains is permitted. Ragilani Laharot, He said, I was in common practice to paskin, the mashtifa rak b'nei koyon, that if the rinsing is only, it's not like there's dirt, visible dirt on an apple. But we know that people use pesticides and they spray things, and people want to wash the apple, get rid of that. He says, if it's rak b'nei kayon k'regula yom, aval ein mamasho psolas, there's no physical, visible dirt. Mutar ladichan kli beli pikpuk. You can rinse it without any concern. Aval yesh psolas mamish. But if you see dirt on a fruit or a vegetable that you want to rinse off, he says it's prohibited. According to Rav Vosner, one is not allowed to wash food to remove more visible waste, such as dirt. On the other hand, Rav Moshe Feinstein rules that even washing off visible dirt is permitted for 3 reasons. Number one, washing is no worse than peeling fruit, which is permitted if you're going to use it right away. This reason appears to conflict with the ruling of the Prima Godim quoted above. The Prima Godim presumably would argue that removing dirt is worse than peeling, as dirt is not part of the fruit, unlike the peel. It's possible that Rav Moshe understood that dirt commonly found on fruit is also considered part of the fruit. I don't know why he would say that, but anyways, washing is no worse than peeling fruit. Many people eat fruit even without washing. So washing fruit is similar to filtering clear liquid that people would drink without filtering. Most had assumed that the leniency only applied to liquids, but Rav Moshe applied the leniency to washing fruits. So it obviously considers the dirt found on the fruit to be part of the dirt, part of the fruit. The third reason of Rav Moshe is it's possible that unlike soaking in water, washing under a flow of water does not constitute borer. He derives support for this distinction from the fact that washing dishes that may be needed later on Shabbos is permitted and borer does not apply. I mean, there is no ochel on a dish.
Yeah, it is.
Meaning, borer applies when you have food and you have waste, and you don't want the waste in your food. You're not eating the plate. I don't understand what he's talking about, bringing a raya from a dish.
No, there's more if like you're choosing clothes. There's no food there.
Okay, Susie says there's borer when you're choosing clothes. So I guess you're getting rid of the psoles and you want to use the dish. I guess that's what he's talking about. He says, "Ubeperos meluchlochin ba'avak," fruit that is dirtied with dirt. He's asked him, "Yes, ishter l'rochtzan midin borer."
It's dust, not dirt. The avak is dirt, dust.
Okay, but dust or yeah. Im yesh ishter l'rochtzan midin borer. Kamor she'asher lishros or karshinan b'mayim, like we learned in the Gemara, Shulchan Aruch, that you can't soak these vegetables. Last year, psolas. Because of the Mishnah Berurah, and the Mishnah Berurah seemed to write as well that shehu adin, that it's prohibited tapuch adama to rinse. But whoever asked Rav Moshe the question noted that people do wash fruit on Shabbos and vegetables. So it seems like the way the Am was noyeg seemed to be against halacha. So Rav Moshe, as very often did, tried to justify, a practice. So hinei isur bor afshu breirus apsoiles, even though you're removing the waste, she'asar filo alter, even though you're going to eat the thing right away, you can't do that. Pashut shekevan sheyev shalikach oichel b'derech achila. In this case where there's dirt, see, normally the halacha wants you to eat the food and leave the dirt behind. Here it's covered with dust. You can't get to the food. And the way of eating it is to wash off the psol, mutter. If you can eat it right away. Like it's permitted to peel garlic and onions as long as you can eat it right away. the fact that today the world, everyone washes their fruit, urak b'chi hay gavna kishmevim aperes loichlum tekaf, you're going to eat it right away. The gam berova pamim rechitas aperes urak liyitron ba'alma. It's just a preference. People eat fruit and vegetables without washing it. Therefore, azleke isser, like drinking clear liquid without filtering it. We said it, filter it is not a problem. V'tapuchei adama, he says potatoes heim meleim avad, the afar. So they're full of dirt and dust. Shalarov bnei adam v'lai lekulam ein reuyim below rechitza. Nobody's going to eat a potato without washing it. Lachein osir. That's why with a potato it's osir. Kiven sheinu lechol alter. And it's certainly you're not eating the potato right away. Anything that most people would not eat, if they didn't eat it right away. However, but Moshe says in his humble opinion, so when you put a vegetable in a kli full of water, so that's bor. Like we learned by the animal food. Like what Yaakov wanted to make a distinction between soaking and rinsing. So Rav Moshe makes that distinction. He says putting water on it. He says it's considered washing and not an act of boirer. I understand what Moshe is saying, because what you're doing when you float it in that water, there's a separation that goes on. And an act of boirer is more applicable there because it's separating. While the act of rinsing is the act of washing, even though the outcome is the same, but the technique is different. Yes, Mario.
I have a question. Why? I think personally the question of potatoes is moot, because if you wash it on Shabbos, you're not going to cook it anyhow. You want to eat it raw? People don't eat potatoes raw.
Eat a potato raw.
No, I don't know what he's talking about.
Right.
I guess Yontif. Boyer operates on Yontif too, so it might apply to Yontif, Mario.
Oh, okay.
Right?
All right.
Might apply to Yontif. Yeah, obviously you're not going to cook it on Shabbos, and we don't eat raw potatoes. I agree. So, but the 39 melachos apply to Yontif, except oichel nefesh bilvad. Regarding cooking. Now we haven't seen that they made any distinction regarding boirer and Yontif. L'chora, by Yontif, the boirer applies as well. So that could be what Rav Moshe is referring to regarding potatoes.
Okay.
He says just like washing dishes is not a problem.
Well, we did see the Rashi in Shabbos on page 57. It says one even may wash the legumes in water on Yontif. And so it appears to be some distinction, but I agree with you, it is only Ochel Nefesh.
The rules for boirer and Yontif are more lenient, which will be discussed in a future volume. So we'll have to wait to get there. So maybe do it, but the potato perhaps is a real active boirer that they aser.
Yeah, but it seems that on Yontif, in other words, that to prepare something to eat. In other words,
They were more lenient, even by boirer.
Prepare a potato because you want to eat it. It's ochel nefesh, so therefore you would be allowed to wash it off.
But then Mario's question is a good question.
No, it's very good.
What was Rav Moshe dealing with? Cleaning a potato, nobody's going to eat the potato.
Okay, but I guess in the litter they ate raw potatoes. I don't know. They couldn't. I don't know.
It's not just a question on Rav Moshe, it's a question on the Mishnah Berurah too.
Berurah too.
So he also refers to the potato, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Mario, it's a great question.
Thank you.
You can leave now, Mario. You're done for the night.
Yeah.
Like if you were going to, first of all, to do it Shabbos afternoon because you want to eat the potato Motzei Shabbos. You can't prepare on
Really?
Shabbos or non-Shabbos.
Yeah, but that's not what it's talking.
But that's a different Isser.
That's
Yeah.
not what,
I'm just trying to come up with all the various
yeah,
ways
but
to think why you would rinse a potato. I mean,
you should ask Reverend, on somebody who wrote this over here.
I will. I'm going to send email to Doron.
Yeah, send an email to Doron or somebody else, or Podlachek. Podlachek is better to send an email to.
Susie says to feed his dog, to feed your dog.
No, Podlachek would be better.
Dogs won't eat raw potatoes?
You can eat a schmutzige potato also.
They
Huh?
eat, dogs eat anything, you should know.
So that's what Susie said. Maybe you're rinsing it because you want to feed your animal.
But that's not what it's not what Ramosha says.
No, he said it's usser to rinse a potato. And we asked the question,
When they came up,
why would you need to rinse the potato?
right.
I mean, is it possible? Does anyone eat raw potatoes? I've never heard of it, but maybe they did in Europe. Who knows?
Yeah, and the concentration camp.
Yeah, I don't think that's the test though, because that, they would
I
eat
know,
anything. They
I
would
know.
eat Vela, but I don't know. I mean, I've never heard of it, but is it possible?
I don't think so.
I will send Doron an email regarding
Why
that.
they're on? Why not Podlachek? He wrote that.
I'm saying Doron Podlachek.
Oh, they're on Podlachek.
Doron Podlachek.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have his email.
I just want to tell you, I wrote him a couple of times about issues he never answered. I'm sure you'll have better luck.
I'm surprised.
Maybe a friend of Rabbi Agatstein.
I'm surprised. No, I'm surprised because he's very responsive.
He's really.
Yeah,
you have his-
Yaakov, you didn't tell him I asked the question, that's why.
well, that's why I'm saying Ernie probably has a better chance for two reasons, because it's Ernie asking the question and it's because it's your question. So
Mhm.
it's 2 out of 3.
He's usually very responsive. Okay. Uktsas Rael is Elamasha Savri Achroin the Gambachol Dover Shaykh Boirer. This is like what Susie said, that Boirer applies to everything, like clothing, socks, choosing, because of dishes. Mikol Mokom, Hamafursh B'Shabbos, the Mutter Ladiach Karos. From the Gemara in Shabbos, Kuf Yud Ches, it seems clear that you're allowed to wash dishes on Shabbos. For example, you need the dish from Friday night to the morning. So washing the dirt off of a plate is not considered a borer. So he wants to compare it to washing fruit. Even by washing dishes permitted, even though people won't use it, you can rinse it. Directly tin mayim, who might sabor veloli tin aleim. Rav Moshe is going back to his concept that maybe rinsing is not considered an act of borer, only soaking is, and then maybe dishes. We know, people used to have those. I mean, my mother used to have. What were those rubber things that you put in a sink and you put the dishes in? People don't use that anymore, do they?
Like a tub?
A tub. No, a washing tub. I mean, we had that. We had a red one and we had a white one.
Use it.
Oh,
People have
no,
it.
because there might be a difference by filling that with water and putting the dish in. So that's like soaking. There's an act of the dirt rising to the top. Then that separates. That we saw is more of a problem than rinsing the dish. I don't know. That's another thing that we could ask. Tochain Ledina. Rav Avadia Yosef rules similarly. Mutar ladiach v'lishtov b'mayim peros or yerokos. You can rinse and wash fruit and vegetables he says if there's pesticide, min harisu shel pneiim, al das lo yichlum, as long as we're going to eat it right away. V'chenim yesh lichluch hadavik b'peros, or dirt or dust or avat. Mutar lahazrim aleim mayim. You can cause water from the faucet to flow on them. Min haberes al das lo yichlum, so you can eat it right away. Okay, I think that's machshava. Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato, the Ramchal, who the author of the Mesilas Yesharim and the Derech Hashem, writes in his work, he wrote other things, the Ramchal wrote plays. He was a playwright as well. Writes in his work Das Satvi, he was a Kabbalist. The Ramchal shared Kabbalistic teachings to a chabur of young people around him, and it got Rabbanim in Italy upset. He was almost put into cherem, was not. He had to forswear ever teaching Kabbalah to this group. The Ramchal died very young, like in his 30s, and he was massively productive. And remember, the Ramchal lived, I think he passed away 1740, 1750. The Gra held extremely highly of the writings of the Ramchal. And therefore, the Mesilas Yesharim became the standard work that Yeshiva Bachrim, the Gra's student, Rav Chaim Volozhner, established the first yeshiva, the Volozhner Yeshiva. And it was from that sort of approbation that the Gra gave to the Ramchal that to start learning Musar, the Sefer was Mesilas Yesharim. That's how the Ramchal got going in the Yeshiva world. If you ever take a look at the writings of the Ramchal, he was a master Hebraist. His Hebrew, how much, the Rambam wrote the Mishnah Torah in magnificent Hebrew. Other people wrote Hebrew, but not with that quality. Of course, there were great Spanish, Yehuda Levi, they wrote poetry, but I'm talking about prose. The prose of the Ramchal was really at a very high level because he was an Italian. The Italian Talmidei Chachamim, the Sforno and others, there was a renaissance in Judaism in Italy. And they became one of the first that were educated in the other knowledges like philology, languages, and science. And there was a medical school in Padua. And they were Jews from Poland who came to Padua and went back to Poland. But the Italian Jews, they really went through a renaissance, just like the regular Renaissance. In the 1500s, 1600s was a bridge between the Middle Ages and modernity. It's not for nothing that's where the Ramchal grew up.
The only I would add to that, it's all absolute, is that there have been some recent additions, like in the last 10 years, where they found more to the Mesilas Yesharim than generally appeared in the standard editions. So if you get a new one, there's actually more there than in the original editions. And there have been many editions, including, interestingly enough, translated by Mordechai Kaplan. You wouldn't think that, but that's the way it is. So there's a lot new on the Ramchal as well.
I have the classic version that we all had. It was like a blue and white sefer. By the way, it was translated by Shraga Silverstein. Who was Shraga Silverstein? He was our principal in Rambam. He was this small, meek, humble little guy. He was just there for a year, but he translated the Mesilas Yesharim in English. If you take a look at the classic edition, it says translated by Shraga Silverstein, who translated other works that were famous. So he was known as a translator. How he became was he in Rambam when you were there, Susie? Okay, but he was there for 1 year and I was there. I remember Shraga Silverstein. Okay. So one of his sefer writes in his work, Das Tvunos, that in creating this world, Hashem wished to offer us all of the good that he could. However, he could not simply give it to us on a silver platter, as true good can only be achieved after significant effort and actively separating, or let's say choosing the good from the evil. He's getting to the point where Hashem wants to be a beneficent Hashem to us. He wants to give us good. And he wants it to be perfect. So Hashem knew in his elevated wisdom, look at the Hebrew that the Ramchal is writing. That's what I'm saying. This is the beginning of the Haskalah is coming. We're talking about Jewish scholars who are writing in Hebrew. after 2,000 years. And Ramchal is part of this Renaissance. Look at this Hebrew. So Hashem wants us to receive with the work of our palms. Ki az yuhem balei atovahu. They will be sort of the masters of the good. V'lo yisha'er lehem boshet panim b'kablamato. They won't be embarrassed for receiving good. If you just receive good and you didn't work at it, you might be shamed. Like somebody just gives you tzedakah, you didn't work for it. That's why they said in Yerushalmi, man da'achal delav delay biyos l'stakule ba'pei. Somebody who eats something that doesn't belong to him, there's a little bit of a shame when the person who gave it to him looks at him. So the Ramchal is saying that the effort that we do to wash our potatoes before Shabbos or whatever, to avoid borer, to separate the good from the bad, unless we have to do it l'alter, which we've learned. You have to eat the food and leave the waste behind. So Rav Yosef Tzvi Rimon, who in our generation, one of the important Zionistic rabbis in Israel today, suggests that this idea can help us to appreciate the significance of the Melacha of Borer. Although we may have trouble understanding why seemingly unimportant actions, such as removing a little waste from food, should qualify as a Melacha on Shabbos, in truth, choosing the good from the bad is an extremely significant action. Why is the Melacha of Brera, Borer, so significant? Lechas Brera nearest Kedover Cotton. It seems like a trivial thing. The Chaser Mashmod, why should it have such impact? Besacha kol mafridin ben klipa legarin, like you're removing the peel from the seed, ben rigvei afar lechita, or like a little bit of dirt from the wheat. Ulam prad l'chashivut b'chanata ochel, but the significance comes in the preparation of the food. It's yishana chashivus miuchedes be'etzem harayon habrera. That's when the act of separating achieves significance. Kanu mitbateh b'tzura fizit. It's a physical form. Ach yesh b'kach bitui gam lever ruchanit. We also have to choose good things from bad things. We're talking about proper machshava, proper action. We're always separating good from evil. So the borer is sort of getting us in the right direction. May a renewed appreciation of the significance of borer enable us to properly observe the detailed halachos of this malacha, as well as to make the proper choices in life in separating the elements that are beneficial for our service to Hashem from those that are not. And there's a nice summary that there always is at the end of the chapter. Okay, let's go to page 73. Any comments, questions, or Arot? Okay. Defining Tochain. Tochain, grinding. The next malach in the bread-making process following borer is Tochain, grinding. Tochain involves grinding the kernels of grain into flour. What happens then? Then you knead, that's the malach of losh, to prepare baking bread. The Menucha Sava discusses the essential concept behind the Av Malacha of Tochen, which he suggests is taking one unit and dividing it up into many parts. Melechas Tochen hiachas milametes avos melachos. Grinding is one of the 39 melachos. Hasuris b'nator b'Shabbos is prohibited. Mahut melechas Tochen, what's the quality or the essence? Hi chalukas guf echad legufim dakim harbe. You take one solid piece and you separate it into many smaller pieces. Kagon tchinas hasamamonim shaisa b'vrasa mishkan, like they were grinding dye components. Like we learned in the Mishnah, it wasn't just baking bread; it was making the dyes. They had to grind things. Hatochen chitim, they also ground wheat. Uchayotzu brechaim, using a mill. You use a mortar and pestle. right? You smash spices in a mortar with a pestle. Arei zav malacha. Both would be av malacha of chayim. I always think about scallions, and you take a knife and you chop it up into small little pieces. Right? Yerek tolush, a vegetable that's already been plucked from the ground, awaits in plushim. Hanoiser eitzim. If you saw wood, you want the sawdust. Oh, hashaf lashon shel matechas. You take a piece of metal and you sort of file it with like sandpaper because you want the filings, like the gold smiths do. Harezu told us Tochain v'chayev. So he wants to say that cutting a detached vegetable with a very, very finely, dak, falls under the melacha of Tochain. Shebechol elu ha'pu'ulos hareu hoifech guf echad legufim dakim harbe. By taking a larger piece and making very smaller pieces from it, the Menucha Saba wants to say that falls under Tochen. So, although the concept of the Melach is relatively easy to understand, the challenge lies in determining the difference between Tochen, which is forbidden on Shabbos, and normal actions of cutting, such as cutting food to eat, which is permitted. Over the course of the Shir, we'll address the parameters of Tochen and attempt to answer this question, as well as understand which other conditions, limitations apply to the Melacha. We will begin with one of the most basic issues of Tochen, namely, which actions are included. Grinding flour involves pulverizing grains to the point at which they become flour. Does the Melacha expand the definition to cutting an item to small pieces as well? This debate stems from how to interpret a passage of the Gemara. In Masechta Shabbos 74b, Veha Tochen, because those of you who remember Masechta Shabbos, the mission of Klal Gadol appears in Masechta Shabbos Ayin Gimel Omid Aleph on the bottom there, right? There's a very long Mishnah, Klal Gadol, and there's 39 halachos, and then the Gemara in the next couple of pages begin one by one to explain each of the Avos Malachos. Tochen is one of the first, so it's already Ayin Daled Amud Beis is where the Gemara starts dealing with Tochen. On Rav Papa, Hai man, the porous silka chai mishum Tochen. So slicing beets into very small pieces is chai for Tochen. On Rav Menashe, Hai man, the solid silti, one who chops wood, is also chai mishum Tochen. The Rishonim diverge in their understanding of these statements. According to Rashi, these Amoraim teach complementarily that Tochen is not only grinding, but also cutting things into more useful fine pieces. Rav Papa applied it to vegetables. Rav Menashe applied it to wood, even though the wood is useful more indirectly. Right? Rashi says the por silka mechatko hadak. Right? You slice it very thinly. We're talking about to the beads. The saliti silti eitzim dakim lavir eish. You're slicing into wooden pieces to burn in a fire. Now, again, not allowed to do that you can't burn it on Shabbos. So, the same question that Mario asked about the potato. So, again, that's the Gemara. The Rambam similarly writes that Rav Papa rules that slicing a vegetable very finely is a tolda of Tochen. He also writes that Tochen includes cutting wood to serve as cooking fuel and for sawing wood for the purpose of producing sawdust. If you take a vegetable and you slice it up very, very finely. To cook it, I keep on thinking of the Israeli salad that we make on Shabbos.
Well, we don't need.
Oh, you make it before. Okay. But because all those pieces are, it's not that fine. We'll have to see what the gather is of fine is. I mean, those pieces, I know there's some Israeli salads where you have big pieces. I like that very finely cut.
So we can never make it again.
No. I don't see, she makes it before Shabbos.
But you can never do it. I don't know, we have to read on.
We'll have to see what does finally mean. If the vegetable's already been detached from the ground, that's not an issue. And now you're cutting it with a knife. So that's Tochen. You're sawing wood to benefit from the sawdust. Someone who's chopping wood is not liable for Tochen unless he produced enough of those small little sawdust chips to cook an amount of an egg the size of a dried fig.
So the Rambam doesn't say cut very fine. He just says cut.
Cuts. But look at what Rashi said. By the poris silka mechatcho hadak. Dak means
No, I know.
That's
I've seen that
so
before.
that could be a machlokes Rashi and Rambam. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
But look, the other Rambam in Hilchos Shabbos, Chaf Aleph says hamachatech hazayech dak dak.
Right,
So the
but the
first
Rambam just doesn't
Rambam
say
said
that.
small pieces.
Yeah.
Here he was less specific. Rabbeinu Hananel understands the side more differently. In his view, regarding both the beets and the wood, the Gemara is describing taking apart the item in such a way that it yields granules.
Doing that.
Haiman de silka, perish ke'en katisha, smashing. V'lo ke'en chituch, not cutting. Chai b'shem torchen. V'chein man de silti, that's the wood. Perush atze de kolim. You're talking about palm wood. Sha'omdim shivi that are layered, like with fibers. Ke'enimin uchshemafari kanimin alalu. When you pull these apart, yotze b'neim kemin kemach. Dak, there's some like little flour that comes out. So if you dismantle the lulav, that's tochen. Rabbeinu Hananel's interpretation emphasizes that the action described for the wood revolves around producing a kind of flour. This explanation fits the Gemara's description of the process. Solid silte, the person renders soless, a word that is used in Tanakh to refer to fine flour. Thus, the Gemara describes someone who makes a kind of wood flour. The Rosh adopts Rabbeinu Hananel's interpretation. As he explains, Rashi's explanation is untenable, because even fine cutting is still merely a form of cutting. Why should that be Tochain? Says the Rosh, Perish Rabbeinu Hananel, when you separate these membranes, you get a flour. When you separate that, the Rosh likes that, because dumya is solid silty, because soilless. Umasha perish Rashi, the poor silka shemachatech yirok dak dak, perish tamuahu. So the Rosh is wondering about Rashi. Why did he say cutting dak dak is considered tochen? Davar shu oichel, it's food. Mechatech dak dak ain't shach betchina. Why should that be tchina? So the Shulchan Aruch, though, rules in accordance with the view of Rashi and the Rambam, according to which chopping things very finely is subject to tochen, even if the items are not being ground into flour. So if the malacha is defined as including chopping very finely, it can be very difficult to precisely articulate the point at which cutting becomes prohibited. How small is considered very finely? This question existed until the Mishnah Berurah wrote the Bir Halacha, writes that the definition is unclear, and thus a person must be sure to cut pieces which are somewhat large to be sure to avoid violating Shabbos.
Of course, that renders the question of what does somewhat large mean. I don't know how much we advance there.
Let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says beferish. Bigmor is summer of Papa Ayman de por silka chay mishum tochen. Again, he brings Rashi poris mechatcho dak dak. Chen kosva toisvis. It's not just Rashi. Toisvis also mayri bechatichos ktanos kein tchina. Ava bechatichos gdolos ktsas. He gives you leeway. Yaakov. He says if they're bigger pieces, ain't der chatchina mekach. Chen kosva rabam dak dak. There's a law in in your idea as well, that in terms of absorption of onions and things like that, so when you cut things dak, so there's a stringency in terms of absorption. That's the only other place I know that this reference is used. The chatichas of onions dak. Kol ze le'inin chiyuv, aval le'inin iser yesh lizorim mahod. The kvar kosa b'sefer Yereim la'Rav Eliezer Mimitz, the shir dakuson lo nodolanu, like exactly what Yaakov is telling us, that we don't really know the shir. So that's why the Mishnah Berurah says we need to be careful. Okay, I'm going to hold off on starting the new segment because we won't finish it. By the way, take a look at page 81, and you'll see what we were discussing: Israeli salad, which might be issues of Tochen in terms of size. I would not consider that dak.
That's the biggest.
I would think-
salad I've ever seen.
Mhm.
Right, I would think that would be considered big pieces. I like it more cut up than that.
Again, proves that we don't really know what this means.
Right. And by the way, sometimes, I'm now understanding better, because sometimes I'm in Israel and I point out to Susie, I don't like this Israeli salad, the pieces are too big.
I like.
But they're probably doing it in Israel to avoid halachic problems.
Okay.
Because they, let's say restaurants are used to, they're going to make it one way. And I like it much finer. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, questions, or aros? I think we finished Borer, now we're into Tochain, and going well, God willing.
Koyach.
Have a
Thank you,
good week,
everyone.
everybody. We'll
Tochen.
see you next week.
Be well.